Welcome to Play to Win, where we play to win. I'm Dylan.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Cameron. This week we're here to do a top 10 cards for cEDH from Commander Legends to Baldur's Gate. So we're going to get started, of course, the way every single top 10 list does.
With cards that aren't in the top 10.
Yes, exactly. Honorable mentions instead.
Begin.
Our first honorable mention we're going to go over is called Campfire. This is a 1-mana artifact that you can tap and pay 1 mana to gain 2 life. cEDH staple already. And then you can pay 2 mana and tap it and exile Campfire to put all commanders you own from the command zone and from the graveyard into your hand. Then shuffle your graveyard into your library.
This is a fun way to get around Drannith Magistrate, or if your commander has been killed 1,000 times, maybe this is an option. Godo plays Commander Beacon, which is a land, which is much better than this, but this is close to that effect.
Yeah, if a deck wanted 2 Commander Beacons, which I think 0 of them do, this would be it.
You can tutor it off of Urza Saga, which Godo already plays. It's probably not going to see play, that's why it's an honorable mention, but it does something that of a card that sees a tiny bit of play. So.
I think the Drannith Magistrate thing is probably what's going to come up the most, but even then, I don't play Lightning Bolt as your Drannith Magistrate.
Yeah,
piece
Lightning Bolt's
instead.
better against Drannith Magistrate than this card.
Also in this set, as it happens. Honorable mention, Lightning Bolt. Still a great card.
So our last and second...
Excellently put.
Our last and second honorable mention is Will, with a Y, Blade of the Frontiers. This is 1 and a red for a legendary creature, Human Warlock. It says, if you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice plus 1 and ignore the lowest roll.
So
there's more.
Oh, sorry.
Jesus Christ. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, put a +1/+1 counter on Will, Blade of the Frontiers. Choose a background. It's a 1/1.
This card probably is not going to see play as is, but it is similar to Krark's Thumb, which is a card that sees play in Krark and Sakashima, which is a deck that really didn't exist a couple years ago until they printed a whole bunch of shit for it. This is something like the coin flipping shit, but with die rolling. So if there are enough dice rolling effects, this card will get better and better and probably one day maybe be good.
I do like, though, that you will be able to play this in your command zone once they do print enough stuff to allow you to actually do this instead. So I think that's a huge upside that Krark's Thumb can't really do.
I was just going to say we're on our second card, and already I have an issue with how you pronounced it, so we're doing great. We're right on track.
Will.
Weil.
I would say that
This is Will. There's so many things that replace I's with Y's.
You just need to read Lord of the Rings like 3 times and like get those weird phonemes in your head and then come back to me.
I'm 30 pages into the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, and I started it a month ago.
1 page a day. After that, you're like, oh God, my head hurts.
I saw the movies, and they're really good.
Let's move on to the top 10. Let's talk about Lord of the Rings when the Lord of the Rings set comes out, because that's actually also going to be happening in the future.
All right. So our first card, our number 10 card, is Xevore Elutral.
Just let Tyler do it.
Xevore Eltruel Exile.
So this is 1, a blue, a black, and a red for a 4/2 legendary creature, Tiefling Warrior. It has haste, and for 2 and tap it, when you next cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a single opponent or a single permanent an opponent controls this turn, for each other opponent, choose that player or a permanent they control, copy that spell, and the spell targets the chosen player or permanent.
So this card allows all your spot removal to act towards all of your opponents. That's an effect that I've kind of wanted in Commander for a while, so it's interesting to see it here. It's a Grixis Commander, so it's already playable. I don't know if it's better than the other Grixis Commanders, as always, but if you want to be controlling, I really like this effect, making all of your removal spells hit multiple things. Eventually, those 3-for-1s are going to start stacking up.
Yep, and not even the only good case scenario. I mean, just like we saw with Hinata, which I think is kind of the weird inverse of this card. This is great with stuff like Intuition, because now you get 3 Intuitions. Also great with Praetor's Grasp. If you're running that, you can probably assemble an entire win out of a Praetor's Grasp that actually can target all of your opponents. The only problem is it's going to cost you 6 to do it the first time. 4 to cast, 2 to activate. That's a big cost, but you know, stuff like Toxrill before we've talked about it's so expensive, you know, it's never going to make the cut, and actually they still feel very, very good at times, so maybe this makes it.
Our number 9 card is called Rug of Smothering. This is 3 mana for a 1/3 artifact creature construct. It's an uncommon with flying, and it says whenever a player casts a spell, they lose 1 life for each spell they've cast this turn.
This stops any infinite thing. If you're casting and recasting a million times, this stops a lot of that stuff. It's pretty good against ad nauseum type effects as well, and it being an evasive, easy to cast creature is also going to be relevant.
It's confusing because the Tymna decks that would want this might also run like rule of law effects, in which case that's not necessarily good. So it doesn't necessarily act as a stacks piece that will synergize with all of your other stacks pieces. But what I like about it is that the decks that can't run rule of law will get to be able to play an effect that can stop ad nauseum strategies still.
Personally, I still think this is Damping Spear for 1 more mana, and any benefits of it being a creature are offset by the fact that it can be removed more easily as a creature. So I'm not very high on it personally, but I also almost never play that kind of effect, so what do I know?
I think another thing to note is like this also helps you get your opponent dead, which is like as a stacks deck, that's what you want to do. You want to get your opponent's deck. So things like Mayhem Devil, that card's so good.
I think you fundamentally understand stacks. You want to just make your opponents miserable for 2.5 hours. That is the reason you play stacks.
No, incorrect. Big disagree.
Hold them hostage until their mothers call and ask why they're not home yet.
All right, we should be making a bigger deal about the numbers.
Yeah,
when we say
definitely, yeah.
Number 8, Raga Draga.
It looks like he just like snorted a line on it.
We should make these crazy. Number 8,
Raga Draga.
Raga Draga is awesome. This is the Gorgut's boss. 2, a red and a green for a legendary creature, Human Boar. It's a 4/4 that says each creature you control with a mana ability gets +2/+2. Whenever a creature you control with a mana ability attacks, untap it. And whenever you cast a spell, if at least 7 mana was spent to cast it, untap target creature. It gains +7/+7 and gains trample until end of turn.
Yeah, talk about getting your opponents dead. +2/+2 is really big. It doesn't sound like it's that big, but +2/+2 spread across a lot of your board. I mean, when you're playing this deck as your commander, basically your entire deck is going to be mana dorks, I think. And making them +2/+2 is huge, having that effect in the command zone. Also, this facilitates aggravated assault wins, which Gruul also like has kind of always wanted to do, but doesn't have a great way to set it up, doesn't have a great way to find the aggravated assault. Nonetheless, this helps with those if you're attacking with like a Bloom Tender and a Birds of Paradise and some mana dorks that make a little bit extra mana. You can attack with fewer creatures and get infinite attacks that way. And then that big giant +7/+7 thing might not come up a ton, but maybe sometimes it will.
Also makes your pyroclasms and the like very, very good. If you know your creatures are largely going to survive them, it definitely makes those excellent.
That's a very good point, yeah. And if you want to be doing like Ponza stuff, like maybe like I feel like if you want a Ruination deck in cEDH, this might be a considerable option. I don't know how good Ruination really is, but this is the deck that would play like Ruination and Collect Your Oof and that type of thing, like Earn 'em, Get 'em, like in the original olden days, like when you're just playing like
yeah.
Armageddon and Mana Dorks. This is like the commander that facilitates that strategy.
I think this is just the most Gruul name ever, by a huge
The most
margin.
Gruul
It's not
card,
even-
it's a pig man, like everything about it.
Oh, Jerry, it's a Pigman! Pigman can take the bus. Number 7.
Say it bigger, bigger.
Number 7 is
Battle Angels of Tyr. This is 2 and 2 white for a creature, Angel Knight. It's a 4/4 with flying and myriad. Whenever Battle Angels of Tyr deals combat damage to a player, draw a card if that player has more cards in hand than each other player. Then you create a treasure token if that player controls more lands than each other player. Then you gain 3 life if that player has more life than each other player.
So what Myriad does, it makes a copy of the attacking creature when it's attacking. So every combat, this guy's basically attacking for 12, kind of 4 for each of your opponents, and you're getting one of each of those things: a treasure, 3 life, and a card draw.
As long as you're not the one on top of all of those things.
That's true. So you're getting that maximum is the best that you're getting.
As long as it gets through. Which,
Yeah, it
as
has
a
to get
4/4
through.
flyer, it probably will.
Probably gonna get through.
This is the best case of White's catch-up mechanic ever.
Yeah, Lanta, I don't know. Maybe. What I like about this card so much is that it, along with the catch-up mechanic that is normally this also attacks your opponents for a bunch. Like, if you want to, we're getting closer and closer to being able to attack your opponents to death for real. And this is, I think, a step in that direction. I don't know. It is a formatted thing that you have to attack with, and it doesn't win you the game when you attack with it. So how good is it really? I don't know.
But I feel like a lot of those Tymna value kind of creature decks might like something like this.
Let's move on to the next one.
Number 6, Gale, Waterdeep Prodigy. This is 2 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary creature, Human Wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast up to 1 target card of the other type from your graveyard. If a spell cast from your graveyard this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead.
This card is pretty good on its face, but since it has the choose the background feature, it's definitely only good with a couple backgrounds, and there's one in particular that is definitely like what you want to pair it with.
So we're going to be looking at Scion of Halaster. This is a legendary enchantment background. It costs 1 and a black. Commander creatures you own have the first time you would draw a card each turn. Instead, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your graveyard and the other back on top of your library, then draw a card.
Yes, so this one's really good because it lets you be in Dimir and also lets you fill up your graveyard for what your commander's trying to do.
Exactly. All of your cantrips are good, so on and so forth. Also, take note that this is not just your first draw of your turn, it is your first draw on any turn. So if you have a Rhystic Study, if you have a Mystic Remora, if you have a Ledger Shredder, there's a reasonable chance that you're going to be able to fill your graveyard reasonably quickly, so it definitely synergizes with this commander very well.
I also like this card with High Tide and with Tutors and really just with any spells. Instants and sorceries, this card is good. Being able to cast your spells more than once is really good, especially casting Tutors more than once is really good, so maybe this card will see play.
Seems like it's a really good value engine even just on its own, right? I mean, you can cast it from your command zone off of an island and a mana crypt. It gets even better when you have that background in play because you get to kind of fuel yourself from the command zone.
I'm also thrilled because I think this might be the first time that I can justify a Leyline of Anticipation in a cEDH deck, which is a pet card. Because if your sorceries are instant speed, this gets so much better.
That's true.
So much better. So you're
good.
definitely running Emergence Zone, and I hope you're running Leyline of Anticipation because that could be pretty sweet.
Number 5, Storm King's Thunder. This is X, a red for an instant, and it says when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell X times. You may choose new targets for the copies. Holy shit.
So in cEDH, I like this card with Kark and Sakashima, maybe. It might be a little bit of an over-the-top, what's that called? Like a
Windmore?
Windmore, it might be a little bit of a Windmore. But even with something as little as Rite of Flame or as great as Jessica's Will, this can like really allow you to like chain through your deck, especially if you're copying it and returning to your hand. You can really start to, I think, churn and win the game through this. But it might just be a little bit of a Windmore. In casual EDH, the things that you can copy with this thing are endless. I mean, if you have enough mana and extra turns and whatever can do a ton. But
Number 4, Wild Magic Surge. This is a red for an instant. Destroy target permanent an opponent controls. And then it says, its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a permanent card that shares a card type with that permanent. They put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of their library in any order. Oh, that's why it's a red card.
this is like a cEDH Chaos Warp, in my opinion. This is like a better Chaos Warp, I think. Sometimes it might bite you in the ass, I guess, but more often than not, it's going to be really good. Like if you can destroy their Underworld Breach and like they get a Mystic Remora, like, yeah, Mystic Remora is still good, but they're not winning the game, so that's pretty nice. This is kind of like the mono red Assassin's Trophy. I probably would play Assassin's Trophy over this because a land is better than another permanent probably, but in decks that are outside of black-green or have a hard time dealing with permanents like Godo, anything mono red, this is going to be an all-star in.
I cannot wait for the game inevitably sometime when you hit someone into their Underworld Breach and just ruin their combo because they flip the Underworld Breach off of resolving this. That would be so sick.
I think as long as you're smart about it, it's only going to be good. Like as long as you don't target Urza so that they can polymorph into something for them, like
Don't win them the game.
Right? Like there are scenarios like you know not to do it. So like as long as you're just like aware and you know exactly what you need to target down, this could be a humongous upgrade for red. Number 3, Archivist of Agma. This is 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature halfling cleric. A Hobbit Cleric. It has Flash, and whenever an opponent searches their library, you gain 1 life and draw a card.
When I first read this card, I stopped for a second at Gain a Life and I laughed. I was like, of course that's what it does against life. And you keep reading, it's a draw card. Wow, this card actually might be pretty good.
I think this card is actually fetch lands, tutors.
Fetch lands is the big one. This card can draw you a couple cards, probably not a ton, because realistically, if your opponents are tutoring a lot, they're probably like winning the game if they're searching the library a bunch. But if you're counting just like the fetch lands, this could potentially draw 1 or 2 cards a turn on a flash body in a rule of law type of deck that you're looking to space out your spells. I think this card is going to pull its weight.
How do you feel safe as an Anala player when Archivist of Agma is in play?
Yeah, the number of combo lines that require searching libraries is pretty darn high. I think this is very strong for sure. It's no Ledger Shredder, but it's one of those 2-minute cards that I think is just going to see play, period.
It's definitely interesting because I think it's obviously worse than Opposition Agent, probably worse than Aven Mind Sensor 2. I think it's probably on par with like Esper Sentinel type effects. Esper Sentinel is a 1-mana creature, which is a big difference, but this has flash. We could do the pros and cons forever. Either way, I think this is in the ballpark of playable, and I expect to see it.
Where are we at about putting this in like every mono white deck? Like, does every single mono white deck want this?
Probably. Maybe Teshard doesn't want this. Like, Close Your Eyes mono white decks might not want this, but I think any deck that's like looking to hang around a couple turns.
Heliod.
Yeah, I think Heliod probably wants this effect.
Repeatable card draw for cheap and white is just hard to come by.
Yeah.
Of course it's getting played.
Number 2, Displacer Kitten. This is 3 and a blue for a 2/2 creature cat beast. It has avoidance. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control.
I've been hearing this one called Paradox Engine, which is kind of fun and cute. I like that. Obviously, it's no Paradox Engine, but the effect that it does is in the same, I guess, ballpark of things that are good, perhaps. I like this with things like Spell Seeker and any type of like cheap, like Mox Amber, like rocks that you don't have to expend like a cost when they enter. Like Mox Diamond, this is not good with because you have to discard another card. But mana rocks that can come back in and float more mana with cantrips. I don't know exactly what this card does yet, but the effect seems powerful enough that I know it's got to be something.
Venser. This card on its own is not necessarily good enough that you just start throwing Venser in decks at 4 mana, but it's close.
Dylan, you were just talking the other day to Ken on Twitter from cEDH about like this card in Krark decks even too.
Yeah, things with Krark that you're like Eldritch Evolutioning or Neoforming, where you can copy that Eldritch Evolution with Krark potentially, and you can flicker things multiple times. I think then it gets pretty good.
And our number 1 card from Commander Legends Baldur's Gate for cEDH, Abdel Adrian Gorion's Ward. This is 4 and a white for a legendary creature human warrior. When Abdel enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you control until Abdel leaves the battlefield. Create a 1/1 white soldier creature token for each permanent exiled this way. It is a 4/4, and you get to choose a background.
This is the White World Gorger Dragon. This does the exact same thing that World Gorger Dragon does. If you can cast an Animate Dead with this in your graveyard, it will allow you to flicker all of your... Not exactly the same thing. You need a mana rock, so it doesn't flicker your lands, I'm pretty sure.
Correct.
So you do need a little bit extra, but the risk is not as risky as World Gorger because this one won't exile all of your permanents, so that's pretty good. It's a lower mana cost, so that's also good. It does the same thing as World Gorger Dragon, essentially, and World Gorger already sees play, which is why I'm putting it as my number 1.
Yeah, definitely just an obvious replacement for the things World Gorger does, which is already a very strong combo. You know, not the strongest, but close. But definitely going to be in your 99 the vast majority of the time. If it's not, if you are determined to play this in the command zone, then you're going to need to do it with the background Agent of the Iron Throne.
It's 2 and a black for a legendary enchantment background, and it says commander creatures you own have whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life.
Agent of the Iron Throne is, I think, the only background that lets you immediately convert this into a win if you get the combo going. But then you're going to have to jump through the hoops of getting it from your command zone to your graveyard. You may want to run some of that stuff already, village rights, or, you know, sacrifice, that kind of thing, but it definitely is harder than just having it in your 99.
I also really like Abdel in Thrasios, Timna, Razakat's strategies. I think this is definitely going to see in that deck. That deck already exists and is already reanimating things and is already using Leon and Relic Order sometimes, so I think this is a card that we'll see play in there.
That's kind of perfect, yeah. Instead of just like having to sacrifice creatures and search for your win, you just make infinite mana, then draw your whole deck, and then win that way with Thrasios.
And to be fair, all of these cards, the exact order of which one is the best and which one is the 10th and the first, who fucking knows? We don't know. This is a rough estimate of the cards that I think we all think will see some type of play in cEDH. But besides these cards, do you guys have any closing thoughts on like the set as a whole?
I think it would be really difficult to smother someone with a rug. I just want to be very clear about that.
They're heavy. They're clumpy.
The rug is designed for smothering, though. So like the thread count is significantly more like it's much closer together, and it's like heavier, right? Like it's...
Someone wove this rug and said to themselves, someone's gonna kill a motherfucker with this thing.
They had to test it out, right? Quality control was like, you can't sell this one. We have to recall all of these rugs.
Patreon.
TCG Player.
Ultra Sleeves.
Dragon Shield.
Play to win, MTG.com.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Smothering Rug.
Specific thank you shout out to our $50 patrons.
Jack Off McGiff, Isaiah Berlisky, Michael Lyon, I don't know why I can't say that word, Kyle Levenberg, Tyrese Maxey, George Allen, Byron Wang, C, Khwaji Ahmed, Anime Gate Cities, Jacob Depp, Reese Uker, Unforeseen God, CZ, Michael Ballou, Jan Wildfang, Adrian Grimm, Sleepy Jarvis, Swampy McGee, Peter Larson, Nocturnal Beaver, Jormags, Ugly, Moxfield, and Baby Jeebus. Thanks, all. I do want to mention the dragons, the Elder Dragons that have some insane effect when you roll a d20 on them. Number one, why the fuck aren't those things legendary? They're Elder Dragons. The format's commander after Elder Dragon Highlander, the EDH. Like, that was such a big miss. But I think the red one and the blue one that make treasures and draw cards equal to the amount that you roll a d20 on, you're going to get like 10 cards or treasures each time you go on estimate. That's not going to probably do anything in cEDH because you're going to have to get an 8 mana creature in play, wait to turn in an attack just for some cards and treasure. Not good. But in casual, big good effect.
I will say, just because it's a big creature with a big effect, the blue one's actually pretty close on Kitten. I don't think it beats out any of those top
I always forget that
Kitten
can do that. And honestly, maybe Magda wants the red one. cEDH is getting weird, so I really don't know. We could be completely wrong in this entire list, and it's all 10 mana creatures that are good in cEDH now.